Do you know when the rating specialist, RVSR, rater, and sometimes the decision review officer on a high-level review are not being totally honest with you as it pertains to your examiner being over 100 miles or more away from your residence? In today's video, I am going to explain and show you how some, not all, but some raters and decision review officers twist the M21-1 reference to deny your claim. Before we get into today's video, make sure you go ahead and hit that like, subscribe, and notification button. So there are some, not all, but some raters and DROs, decision review officers, that are twisting the language in the M21-1 to deny veterans' claims when they submit an actionable and sufficient DBQ and their examiner is 100 miles or more from their residence. Yes, believe it. I've been talking about actionable and sufficient DBQs and Nexus. And guess what? I'm going to continue to talk about it. But today I am going to show you the M21-1 manual reference, how the rater and DRO is twisting that information to deny your claim. But most importantly, what can you do to fight back? Before we get into our slides, a word from my sponsor.
Veterans, if you're filing a VA disability claim for a mental health condition, you know the process can be frustrating and overwhelming. Having the right evidence can make all the difference. That's where Tampa Counseling and Wellness comes in. They specialize in providing mental health DBQs and Nexus statements, helping veterans establish direct service connection for mental health conditions or secondary service connection due to issues like tinnitus, migraines, or back problems. The team at Tampa Counseling and Wellness is passionate about supporting those who serve. They understand the VA process and are committed to helping you get the benefits you've earned. If you need expert support for your mental health claim, don't go at it alone. Contact Tampa Counseling and Wellness today.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get into this hot topic, slide number 1. Here in slide number 1, taking you to the M21-1 manual reference. Now, this particular manual reference was pretty long, but we're gonna break it down today, okay? So it says potential indicators of DBQ inauthenticity. Now, potential. As I go through this M21-1, I want you to keep that word in your head, potential. It does not say these are, okay? It's not saying that what we're about to cover is or makes the DBQ inauthentic, okay? Potential. While privately completed DBQs should generally be accepted at face value, as discussed, there's another M21-1. Make sure you go out and you read it. Well, actually two, E and F. There may be factors, maybe, not are, but may be factors that warrant closer scrutiny to assess the authenticity of the information provided. Now, veterans, I'm going to hold you accountable as well. You have to make sure you're going to a reputable examiner and make sure they are doing it the right way. Make sure they are not putting false information on these DBQs, okay? What I'm talking about today, the examiner and the veteran, they did it the right way, okay? They just didn't put something down and lie or commit fraud, okay? Let's keep going. Indicators of potential, okay, there's that word again, potential inauthenticity include, but are not limited to the following. Okay, here we go. Is located in unreasonable distance, generally more than 100 miles from the veteran's place of residence, yet the provider reported regularly seeing the veteran as a patient and/or that the examination was completed in person. Okay, so keep in mind, potential. Generally more than 100 miles away. But also on that DBQ, it'll ask, was the veteran seen in person? Is the veteran regularly seen as a patient? Now, there are times, I'm sure, that the veteran may go once a month to see an examiner somewhere. Okay, that's not uncommon. Also, I'm gonna throw this at you. There's another M21 manual reference out there that talks about telehealth and telemental. Okay, so let's just take a mental condition. Let's just say your doctor is 150 miles away from you, and you do your exams by video. It's nothing saying that you can't. So raters and drones have to use common sense, but they're taking this 100 miles that's in this M21-1 and twisting it and saying, oh, your doctor cannot be more than 100 miles. That is not what this M21 manual reference states. So when they tell you that, call them out on it. But you got to know the reference that they're referencing to say, no, you're not right. It doesn't say my doctor has to be within 100 miles. Okay? It just says it is a potential, not that it is an indicator, a potential indicator. Okay? That's how they're twisting it. Let's keep going. The privately completed DBQ contains information that conflicts with the overall evidentiary record, particularly concerning details that impact the outcome of the claim. This is what they're talking about. And I've seen this, okay? Especially when I rated. The veteran is getting treatment at a VA medical center for, let's say, PTSD. And when the rater looks at those progress reports, it's showing the veteran should be 30%. But when they go out and get a private DBQ from a private examiner, and let's say it was just one and done, that was the only time they went, that DBQ shows the veteran should be 100%. That's what they're talking about. That's a conflict. So then you're putting that rater in a position like, okay, wait a minute. I've seen some raters assign the 30%, and I've seen some raters say, okay, well, the VA medical progress note says 30, this doctor says 100, I'm going to meet somewhere in the middle and give the veteran 50 or 70, depending on if there's any other evidence. Now, what I'm not saying is only go to the VA, and I'm not saying not to go to the VA. What I am saying, understand what could happen if you decide to get treatment at the VA MC and go out on your own and get a DBQ from an examiner that has not been treating you over a period of time, okay? Then at the bottom it says, VA determines privately completed DBQ, VA determines the privately completed DBQ is insufficient for rating purposes and orders an examination, but the veteran refuses to report for the examination. Here's a nugget. When they do that, they have to note, they have to make a note in VBMS per this same N21-1 reference. When that rater says, hey, that DBQ is insufficient, they must put a note in VBMS and explain why they feel that DBQ is insufficient. And also, I think they should be required to put it in the rating decision. And that's where you, the veteran, have to be educated, because if they do that and they put M21-1 reference, then you need to come back and read it and understand it. Let's keep going. Slide number 2. Now, this is the same M21-1 reference. Like I said, this was a long one, okay? And a lot of information, a lot of good information. important, the presence of one or more of these potential, there's that word again, potential indicators of the inauthenticity does not automatically mean that a privately completed DBQ is inauthentic or fraudulent. One or more. Let's just say, let's use that 100 miles. That's the only thing. So they're telling the rater and the dro, no, it does not mean that it's inauthentic or fraudulent. However, the presence of one or more of these indicators may call into question the authenticity of the information provided and may, I put that in bold and underline it, may warrant additional development. Now, when I rated, I was rating before DBQs came out. And then as a rater, adjudicating my own claim, I use DBQs with my own claim. Got to make sure you do it the right way. Sometimes they'll say, oh, well, here's a 4142. We want to see other progress reports from that doctor that completed the DBQ. And the veteran says, well, I don't have any. Oh, well, you paid for that DBQ. Yeah, I did. I gave the examiner the necessary information they needed to review. I went to 3 or 4 visits and they completed the DBQ. And I would challenge that VA employee, especially at the high level review, to DRO. Well, the VA pays for DBQs. They pay QTC, LHI, Optimum, whoever that third party contract is. You all pay them. And they're not my treating physician or examiner. What's the difference? Challenge them on it, okay? Let's keep going. The distance between the non-VA provider's location and the veteran's place of residence should not be considered as an indicator of potential inauthenticity as described above if the veteran lives in a remote area such that driving more than 100 miles to see a healthcare provider would not be considered unreasonable, okay? So like I stated earlier, if you are more than 100 miles or more from that examiner, you need to explain that, because guess what? A lot of the employees do not even know about this M21-1 manual reference. They know about it, but they're only looking at what I showed you on page 1 where it talks about 100 miles, and this is how they're twisting it, okay? Or regularly or periodically travels more than 100 miles to see the particular healthcare provider for a specific reason, for example, to receive specialized treatment as a cancer center or research hospital. I think they should have went a little bit further and just said, hey, some veterans, they have a really good doctor and the doctor's more than 100 miles away, and they may go see him once a month, once every 2 months, or once a quarter, every 3 months, okay? That's not uncommon. And again, like the example that I gave you about a mental health professional, maybe not a mental health professional, but a veteran that's seeking mental health treatment. They lived in LA, they moved to Miami, they were seeing that provider for years and said, hey, I still want to seek treatment with you. I don't need to come in person. Can we do it virtually by secure Zoom? Sure, not a problem. Last time I checked, Miami is over 100 miles away. That is not uncommon. Think about COVID. Okay, a lot of people were doing stuff by telehealth. All right, now there are some exams that has to be done in person. Okay, I'm not talking about those. And down at the bottom, I didn't highlight this in red, but it states a privately completed DBQ should not be routinely rejected or automatically deemed potentially inauthentic or fraudulent solely because it supports entitlement to a maximum scheduler evaluation for the condition. There it is, people. Okay, so basically what they're saying is, if you have a condition that's DBQ completed and it gives you 100%, they're not supposed to say, oh, just because, they're granted 100% and that examiner's over 100 miles away, no, you can't do that. So again, misinformation from the DRO and the rating specialist. Okay, slide 3, this is the final slide. End of this M21 manual reference, the notes. Claims processors have a duty to evaluate and weigh all evidence of record, including private completed DBQs. Now, I've also seen veterans have private DBQs and they'll send in a few progress reports from that examiner that completes that DBQ, okay? So you have 3 or 4 visits. In some of my previous videos, especially the ones where I talked about the tinnitus being removed, the 50% for the sleep apnea being removed, and the changing of the general rating criteria, okay? I was saying, hey, find you a doctor, start going to that doctor or mental health professional, get a few visits under your belt, and then ask them to complete a DBQ, okay? Or ask them beforehand, but make sure you build that paper trail, take those progress notes and put them with your DBQ and nexus statement and submit them all together, all right? Now, last paragraph here. If a privately completed DBQ is erroneously deemed insufficient, which the majority of them are that I've been seeing, okay, and the veteran fails to report for an examination that was requested on the basis of the DBQ being inadequate for rating purposes, then the privately completed DBQ should not be assigned lower probative weight. So what they're saying is, for example, VSRs are requesting CMP exams. VSRs are not trained to know what makes a DBQ and nexus statement actionable and sufficient. So depending on who DESA lands on, that VSR may say, well, I'm behind on my production points. I don't want to bother a rater, so I'm just going to request an exam. Instead of saying, hey, rater, can you look at this DBQ and nexus statement and tell me if it's actionable and sufficient? I've had VSRs reach out to me and ask me that before. Takes about 5-10 minutes. Yep, it's good to go. Go ahead and mark it RFD. A lot of them are not doing that. They're just requesting the exam, which is totally wrong. Now, if the DBQ is inadequate, then yes. There's another M21 manual reference that states there are several things that VA employee can do. And one of them is to request the CMP exam. Now, there's other things that they can do, but the majority of the time, they are not going to do it. So again, when this happens, that's listed in this private DBQ, the rater has to go into VBMS or the VSR and put why they feel that it's not completed correctly, it's inadequate, okay? But if it was erroneously deemed adequate, then they have to basically use it, okay? They can't say, oh, it doesn't have probative weight, okay? In this case, it does. I know that's a lot, but again, I don't think it was. You have to understand this M21-1 manual reference. It's happening to a lot of veterans that have decided to go out and obtain a private DBQ and nexus statement, obtained it correctly, and the information on it is truthful, and they refuse the CMP exam. A lot of people reach out to me, Dwayne, you're telling veterans not to go the CMP exam. I'm not telling veterans not to go. What I'm telling veterans is this: if you decide not to go because you do have an actionable and sufficient DBQ and nexus statement, that is your right, and there are guidelines that VA employees are supposed to be following that some of them are not in this particular situation. Now, when I was going through this process years ago, DBQs came out and I said, you know what? I'm no longer going to a CMP exam. I had 4 VA CMP exams. 2 of them were great. The other 2 were horrible. And guess what? The raters use those because that's all they have to deny the claim. When I got a copy of that CMP exam, those 2 that were horrible, those examiners flat out lied. And the only thing I can do, or the only way I could fight back, is to go out and get my own DBQs completed and get the right information put on those forms. And then I still had a hard time, okay? So I'm not saying not to go, but if you decide not to go and you stand on your evidence, just know, one, with some, not all, with some raters and droves are doing and twisting the language in the M21 that I just showed you to deny the claims. make sure you get educated because you're spending a few $100. Also, make sure you do it the right way. With that being said, make sure you like, subscribe, hit that notification button, and as always, share this video with your fellow veterans. Thank you.